In our aquatic chamber on day one, our nutrient levels started out in abundance at 0.2 parts per million. Our phosphate levels started out relatively low at 0.1 parts per million, and on the final day increased to 0.5 parts per million. In our terrestrial chamber, our nutrients levels increased by the last day starting at 20 pounds per acre and ending at 150 pounds per acre. Our phosphate level started out relatively low at 150 pounds, but our chamber ended with an abundance of 200 pounds.
In our aquatic chamber, our temperature stayed between 20.8 degrees Celsius and 21.8 degrees Celsius. Our pH average was 6.02. The dissolved oxygen started at a high 6.2, and by the 6th day of recorded data, our dissolved oxygen was at a low of 1.1 due to the death of our fish. However, on the final days of our project, our oxygen level slightly increased to 2.0, which shows succession as a result of the plant cleaning the water to diminish the bacteria from the fish. In our terrestrial chamber, our average temperature was at 20.7 and our average pH was at 7.05. Since we had an overpopulation of worms and an abundance of seeds, our plants sprouted at a relatively good height but lacked in thickness. Over the experimental period, our plants became weak and stopped growing by the 4th day. Our nitrogen values in our terrestrial chamber started at 20 pounds per acre and greatly increased to 150 pounds per acre. Our phosphate levels started at 150 pounds and by the last day reached 200 pounds. Our potassium levels started at a low 100 pounds per acre and ended at a high 210 pounds per acre. Our nitrogen levels increased dramatically due to the ammonia from the worms. Our potassium levels increased due to the nutrients provided from the decomposition chamber as well as phosphate levels. Our nitrate levels in our aquatic chamber started at 0.2 parts per million and ended at 0.3 parts per million. Our phosphate levels started at 0.1 parts per million and gradually increased to 0.5 parts per million. Our nitrogen values started at 20 pounds per acre and greatly increased to 150 pounds per acre. Our phosphate levels started at 150 pounds and by the last day reached 200 pounds. Our potassium levels started at a low 100 pounds per acre and ended at a high 210 pounds per acre. Our nitrogen levels increased dramatically due to the ammonia from the worms. Our potassium levels increased due to the nutrients provided from the decomposition chamber as well as phosphate levels. Overall, our Ecocolumn was somewhat successful. A positive effect that occurred was our aquatic chamber started succession. For future groups, they should make sure that they use more than one in-ground plant in order for oxygen circulation, and only a few worms to avoid overpopulation, and a few seeds so that they can grow to an appropriate height.